Imagine your childhood. Imagine that you were playing in the sandbox, riding bikes with your friends, in general, creating havoc wherever you went. Maybe playing hopscotch and jump rope. All things that you think of with your childhood that make you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Now, also imagine living in cars instead of houses. Trailers that maybe weren't safe or beneficial to your health. Or wondering what relative's house you were going to sleep at next. That was my childhood. We had intermittent periods of homelessness. This is me and my brother up here. Yes, I am older. No, I don't look like it. But that picture represents something. It represents what we think of childhood as versus what it actually was for me. In the US right now, 1 in 30 children will experience homelessness at some point in time in their childhood. 50% of those children are under the age of 5. To break that down a little bit further for you, that's the equivalent of 1 child in every classroom at every grade level every year. Even further, 5 people in this room have experienced the same things that I have. Also, what you may not know is that the United States has the largest homeless population in the developing countries around the world. You don't often think about that. And oftentimes, we don't think about these stats associated with our country. I don't share my story with you to make you feel sad, although I'm sure that you do, or feel uncomfortable. I share it with you because I believe that sharing your story matters, and that I want to redefine what the word homelessness means. I also want to empower and give voice to those who, like myself, have experienced homelessness or extreme poverty, and let you know that you have a great place in the world, and that the things that you have to share and to say matter and very impactful. As I grew in childhood and got to be a teenager, I really didn't care what other people had to say about what was good for my well-being. Why? Because I had already experienced so many things that, to me, adults didn't always know the best choices for me. Consequently, I didn't always do so well in school. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, by the way. But I failed freshman English class on purpose because I didn't care. I was more concerned with the idea, because I had spent so much time, the idea of the struggle to survive, which is vastly different than the struggle to obtain more education or to do better in that normal place that we have set up our society. So when I got to my senior year in high school, obviously I had to retake freshman English. I wasn't happy about that. But my English teacher, Mr. Sievers, he was a very phenomenal teacher. And we were talking about, I really don't remember what the subject was that we were talking about. But here's what I do remember. Mr. Sievers stopped the class and he said, I think we need to revisit something that's not necessarily related to English. And he turned around on the chalkboard and he wrote the numbers $40,000. And I'm going, what is that? And he said, that's my annual income. That's what I make as a teacher. $40,000? Like, there's so much you can do with that. And in my mind, he might as well have wrote down $1 million because that was the equivalent of $40,000 to me. Up until that point in my life, I had no frame of reference for what was considered normal income for a family. So $40,000 to me was a lot at that time. But it also did something else for me. It gave me something with which to build upon. Suddenly, I understood how poor we had been growing up, but I also understood what the possibilities were, and they were endless at that point. If $40,000 was attainable, what else could I do with my life? I would go on then, because of those experience, combined with the experience of intermittent homelessness as a child, I would go on to become a nonprofit director. And I would help families achieve housing for the first time in low-income brackets, or on the flip side, I helped families retain their housing, prevent foreclosure. And I did that for a number of years. I also have a strong passion for reading and writing, believe it or not. That was one of the things that I did a lot as a child in my alone time, because libraries are wonderful because you can access a book for free. So I became an author because if my voice matters, then that means that I can speak about these topics through my writing, and I can give voice to those who maybe don't have a voice, and also help create this dialogue so that we can talk about these things in a civil manner. Homelessness was a profound impact on me, and it carries with you throughout your life. The realities of homelessness is that it's pervasive in our country, in our communities, but you don't see it. I am sure that many of us didn't realize that the largest portion of the homeless is children. And not only that, but they're the ones most affected by things that we don't think that are going to be affected by. Right now, consider this. In the US, there are 71 cities that have enacted policy or laws that make it illegal to feed the homeless. Now, we think of homeless oftentimes as the man sleeping under the underpass, or maybe fell on hard times, or whatever the circumstances that created it. It's oftentimes not wrapped around the fact that there are children involved 9 times out of 10. So when you make a policy that says it's illegal to feed the homeless, then I ask myself, does that also translate to legalizing the neglect and well-being of children's safety and health and the issues that revolve around them? I am sure that those 71 cities hadn't intended for that to be the impact when they enacted those policies, but that's the reality of what happens. I believe that it is very possible to prevent homelessness. But I also think that we have a tendency, myself included, to look at problems and say, well, if I didn't create it, then it's not my problem to solve. And I ask myself, is that really true? Do I really not have the capability to look at this and say, well, that problem exists. How can I help to solve it? And I encourage others to ask themselves the same thing. I've come a long way since my childhood, and I've done amazing and extraordinary things. I've traveled outside of the country. I've met many people all over the world. You don't realize how many people are affected by homelessness, and you may not even know it. In fact, more than 53 celebrities have experienced homelessness. Halle Berry, David Letterman, Tyler Perry. That says that this is a problem that we've had for a long time, that it's bigger than we know, and that it affects many, many more people than we realize. And probably we're never going to recognize them on the street because they look normal like you and I. It also says that many times those of us who have experienced it will go on to do extraordinary and incredible things with their lives. I hope that what I've shared with you, and that by sharing my story, that it gives voice to a topic that maybe we hadn't known what kind of dialogue should wrap around that. It maybe creates meaningful dialogue. And that by sharing my story with those who may not have experienced it, now we have a common thread to talk about. You can share with me what that means to you, and I can share with you what it looks like from my side. I also hope for those of you in the audience that have experienced the same things that I have, that you recognize that your voice matters, that your story matters, and that it can change lives significantly. You can do great things if you choose to share the uncomfortable things. Thank you.